We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, opposed to secret oaths, opposed to secret proceedings, secret proceedings. No official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, would interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Welcome to Conspiracy Corner Podcast, everyone. This is Abe, your host. It is July 17th, 2024, Wednesday. My plate is full, my plate is full. I've got this episode that I'm going to put out as far as a Leave the World Behind episode. This is a special episode. We will be reading a little bit of the book, but also be putting in some side bonus conspiracy stuff. But I'm not really going to give too much of an update today because I don't want to ruin it for the next episode of my paranormal vacation I went on. And me and Sammy, Bunny Rabbit and Deer, did some paranormal investigation today. And had some fun in Georgetown, Kentucky. So that will be an episode that will come out, knock on wood, hopefully soon. So, not much for an intro, just taking care of me, myself, and Irene, and making sure everyone's good. So, leave the world behind QR code. Leave the world behind QR code. Here's what it links to and what it means. The hidden QR code in Leave the World Behind leads to a website about a creepy abandoned amusement park. Did you spot the mysterious QR code hidden in Leave the World Behind? Here's where to find it and what it links to. Netflix's apocalyptic psychological thriller starring Julia Roberts, Ethan Hawke, and Mahershala Ali is currently the most watched film on the platform, and viewers have been sharing their hot takes about that weird ending and what it all means. But if you were paying close attention to the film, you might have noticed a few hidden Easter eggs and details scattered throughout. Namely, the QR code that appears for a split second buried into the map of the United States on the TV. If you were just casually watching, there's no way you would have spotted it. But eagle-eyed viewers have now shared screenshots on social media and have figured out a way to scan it. Around 34 minutes into the film, the camera pans to one of the TVs in the house, which has been left on the emergency broadcast screen. The screen briefly gains signal, and a map of the United States is shown along a headline that reads, "Cyber Attack Across the Country." The image on the TV appears pixelated at first, but comes into focus a few seconds later before completely disappearing again. Upon closer inspection, hidden within the color-blocked counties, there's a small QR code placed over the Kentucky/West Virginia area. Because the QR code is so small and not clear enough to scan successfully, viewers have been desperate to find out what it actually links to. Someone has now enhanced the code, and it actually links to a website for a creepy abandoned amusement park. The Leave the World Behind QR code links to a real-life place called Lake Shawnee abandoned amusement park in Mercer County, West Virginia. Which, by the way, I used to live in Mercer County, Kentucky, Harrodsburg. So I thought this was strange. Per the websites, and by the way, we have a Shawnee River that flows through Mercer County, Kentucky. It's in Shakertown. So lots of strange synchronicities. I get goosebumps. Per the website's descriptions, there is something unnatural about the attraction's location, which is billed as one of the world's most haunted places. A Native American burial ground, violent deaths, freak accidents. Who knew a simple amusement park could hold such a dark past? The site writes. And if you know anything about the paranormal, you know that Indian burial grounds are a hotbed for, the paranormal. I mean, just is what is. Watch Poltergeist. What does the Leave the World Behind QR code mean? Well, location-wise, there doesn't appear to be any connection to the film's setting, as that takes place in Long Island, New York. Theories have also popped up amongst viewers, with some suggesting that it could be a hidden signal within the film, telling people to head to that location for safety. However, others think it is likely intended to be an Easter egg that links back to the film's ending and message. Leave the World Behind asks, what are we left with once we lose our resilience on tech? At the end of the film, we see Rose get completely distracted and forget all about the horrors that are happening in the real world after she finds a Friends DVD box set in the bunker of the house nearby. She pops the disc in, settles in to watch the final episode, and becomes blissfully ignorant to what's unfolding outside. The amusement park, built over the land that saw countless violent deaths and burials, which now acts as a selling point for the attraction, could be a nod to that ending, reflecting the way society can easily ignore terrible things in place of a bit of fun and distraction. Which, by the way, we are going to do an entire episode on Leave the World Behind and the whole Friends connection and the craziness of that. So far, director Sam Esmail has not explained why that specific link was chosen for the QR code, but we'll update this article as soon as he explains more. So that's it for the intro, and we'll get into the next chapter of Leave the World Behind. Chapter 11 and Leave the World Behind. That day's morning seemed distant, like a story about someone else Clay had once been told. He could almost see the beach towels drying on the railing outside, and they were like the pinch you're supposed to administer when you think you're dreaming. Amanda followed just behind him, and they came into the kitchen and found these strangers there, moving around like they owned the place, which perhaps they did. I made drinks. Felt like it was in order. GH gestured at the glass in his hand. Our private reserve. I'm happy to get you one. The man had left a cabinet ajar, and Clay could see inside of the bottles of Oban wine, the expensive tequila, in the porcelain vessel, which he had done an inventory of the kitchen. Had he missed this, or had it been locked? I might have a drink. GH poured one. Ice? No ice? Clay shook his head and took the glass being offered. He sat at the island. That's lovely. Thank you. It's the least we can do. The man gave a mirthless laugh. There was a temporary silence, as though they planned it to memorialize someone now gone. I might need to excuse myself. Ruth said. Of course. Clay didn't know what was required of him. She wasn't asking his permission, and it wasn't his to grant. Amanda watched the woman leave the room. She poured herself a glass of wine she'd opened earlier because she wasn't sure what else to do. Her wine, the wine she'd paid for. She sat beside her husband. It is a beautiful house, she said. What a thing to make small talk now. G.H. nodded. We love it. I'm happy to hear you do too. Have you been here long? Amanda said. She was trying to interrogate, hoping to catch him. Bought it 5 years ago. We spent quite a while on the renovations, almost 2 years. But at this point, it's home, or home away from home. Whereabouts do you live in the city? Clay said, knowing how to make small talk too. We're on Park, between 81st and 82nd. What about you? Clay was cowed. The Upper East Side was uncool, but still holy. Or maybe so uncool that it was, in fact, cool. They'd held on to their place so long he could no longer comprehend real estate, the local sport. Still, he'd been in apartments on Park, Upper 5th, Madison. It always felt unreal, like a Woody Allen movie. We live in Brooklyn, Carroll Gardens. It's really Cobble Hill, Amanda said. She thought that more respectable, a better repose to his uptown address. That's where everyone wants to live now, I guess. Younger people. I imagine you have more space than we do. Well, you have all the space here in the country, Amanda said, reminding him of what she thought was her cover story. A big part of the reason we bought out here, weekends, holidays, get out of the city and into the fresh air. It's so different here, the air. I like what you all did. Amanda stroked the countertop like it was a pet. We had a great contractor, so many of the little things were his idea. Returning from the bathroom, Ruth paused in the living room to switch on the television. The screen was that vintage shade of blue from some simpler technological era. White letters important. Emergency broadcast system. There was a beep, then a quiet hiss, the sound of something that was not much of a sound, then another beep. They kept coming, the beeps. There was nothing but the beeps, steady but reassuring. The three others walked into the living room to see it for themselves. I wonder if it's Morse code. So no news there, Ruth said, mostly to herself. It's probably just a test of the emergency broadcast system, Amanda said, being skeptical. It would say so if it was, Ruth said. It was common sense. You see this? They all saw it. Changed the channel. Clay had faith. We were just watching a show. Ruth scrolled through every available channel. 101, 102, 103, 104, then more quickly 114, 116, 122, 145, 201. All blues. Those meaningless words. This is some emergency broadcast system we've got. Well, there's my co-host, did you hear? I'm sure it's nothing, Clay said, looking at the built-in shelves with ramondeered art books and old board games. It would tell us more if there was more to tell. Ipso facto. Satellite television is so unreliable, but it's impossible to get them to run the cable out this far, so it's the only option. Ruth had wanted the house to be far from everything. She'd been the one who wrote the Airbnb listing, and she meant it. That the house was a place apart from the rest of the world was the best thing about it. The wind is enough to knock it out, G.H. said. as he sat in one of the armchairs. Rain. It's not very reassuring. The rain can affect a satellite. But it's true. Clay shrugged his shoulders. So, there's an emergency. The emergency is that New York City is without power. But we still have it, even if we don't have TV or the internet. So, that's got to make you feel better, I'd imagine. You were right to get out of the city. It must be a mess. Amanda didn't believe this, but she also wondered, should they fill the bathtub with water? Should they find batteries, candles, supplies? So she's already thinking about that stuff. Somebody is knocking. Give me just a second. I think you should stay here tonight, Clay had said, seeing enough evidence. Tomorrow we'll sort out what's happening. Amanda had nothing to say about the emergency broadcast system. A blackout could be something. It could be a symptom of something bigger. Ruth had 19 minutes to work it out and wanted to say it. It could be a fallout. It could be terrorism. It could be a bomb. Let's not let our imaginations run away. Clay's mouth was sugary from the drink. A bomb? Amanda was incredulous. GH didn't like to ask, but he had to. You know, I'm sorry to trouble you, but we didn't have dinner. Some cheese and crackers before the concert, that was about it. The party. Was it a party now? Retreated to the kitchen, Clay took the leftover pasta, still in its pot, out of the refrigerator. He was suddenly aware of how messy the room was, how thoroughly they'd made themselves sloppily at home. Let's eat something, he said. It was his idea. Professors learn that, taking the occasional insightful classroom comment and transforming it into fact. Ruth noticed that the sink was full of dirty dishes. She pretended not to be disgusted. A dirty bomb in Times Square? Or some coordinated effort at the power plants? She had never thought of herself as imaginative, but now she was discovering a flair for it. It only sounded like paranoia, if you were wrong. Think of what had been done and forgotten in their lifetimes in the past decade alone. We shouldn't speculate, GH said. He was trying to be reasonable. Someone had left the tongs inside the pot. The metal was cold to the touch. Clay filled our bowls, microwaved them in turn. Where are the power plants in New York City? There was so much you never knew in life, even someone smart like he was. Clay found this marvelous and meaningful. They must be in Queens, I guess, or by the river, perhaps. Some guy blows up a suitcase in Times Square. His pals do the same thing at the power plants. Synchronized chaos. The ambulances couldn't even get through the streets if all the lights were out. Do the hospitals even have generators? Ruth accepted a bowl of pasta. She didn't know what else to do, so she ate. Also, she was hungry. The pasta was too warm, but good, and she was unsure why this was something she begrudged. This is very kind of you, she said. Amanda slurped accidentally. She was suddenly ravenous. Sensual pleasures reminded you that you were alive. Also, drinking too much made you super hungry. It's nothing, she said. GH could feel the food working on his chemistry. It is delicious. Thank you, he said. It's the salted butter. Amanda felt the need to explain because it was unclear whether she was guest or host. She liked clarity about the role she was meant to discharge. The European kind, shaped like a cylinder. It's a very simple recipe, she said. She thought the chat might solve the discomfort. She was embarrassed to have served this to strangers. The meal was just an improvisation that had ended up part of her repertoire. She liked to imagine some future summer at some other rental house, the children, back from Harvard and Yale, requesting this special dish that reminded them of the sun-filled childhood. On vacation, I like to keep it simple. Burgers, pancakes, that kind of thing. I'll do the washing, said Ruth. We're here now. We are grateful to you both. I feel so much better having eaten. I think I might have another drink, G.H. said as he refilled his glass. It was whiskey, old enough to vote. It was for special occasions, but surely, today, this counted. I'll join you. Clay slid his glass toward the man. You see, there's nothing to worry about here. Tumbler was somehow fitting. The glass was heavy and expensive, and it kept him from tumbling to the floor. The strangers didn't know him, so they didn't know that G.H. was not given to hyperbole. In the hour and a half drive, his fear had doubled like resting dough. Well, it was disturbing. He had what he wanted. But now he wanted this man and this woman to understand him. He could sense their suspicion. Ruth was calmed by the suds, the yellow sponge, the lemon scent, and the squeak of a clean hot plate. The preceding 19 minutes, she had been both suspended and speeding. Modern life had an uncanny tempo. One man was never meant for. Cars and planes made time travelers of us all. She'd looked out a black night and shivered. She'd put a hand on G.H.'s knee. She'd thought about this place, this house. Solidity made a tastefully furnished, beautifully situated, and absolutely safe, but for the complication of these people in her kitchen. That's an understatement, she said. A blackout, like Hurricane Sandy? Clay recalled unfolding reports of an explosion, Superfund sludge from the Gowanus spilling into the water supply, every sip of carcinogen. They were without power a day and a half. It had been a charming emergency, hunker down with playing cards and books, but the lights came back on. He had baked an apple pie. Or in 2003, Amanda said, the electrical grid. Do you remember that? I walked across the Manhattan Bridge. Couldn't reach her on the phone. Clay put a hand on his wife's, nostalgic and possessive. I was so worried, of course, we were remembering 9/11. But it was so much better than that day. The parochial one-upmanship New Yorkers think their own, special remit. But everyone it possessive of the places they inhabit. You recount the disasters to demonstrate your fidelity. You've seen the old girl at her worst. I thought of 9/11, of course, Ruth said as she washed food scraps down the drain and switched on the disposal. What if people are dying right now? Remember, a few years ago, the guy drove his truck on the bike path on the west side? Do you remember that? Just rented a truck in New Jersey and killed all those people. It's not even difficult. Like, how much planning could that have possibly taken? Think about it. The lights, all the lights, G.H. said, knowing that no one was interested in hearing about the dream you had last night. This had been real, but maybe some things you just have to see for yourself. Clay believed if you said it, it would be true. I think in the morning, he said. It is the morning now, Ruth said, meeting Clay's eyes in the reflection of the window. A neat little trick. I guess what I mean is that things always look different in the light of day. I guess self-help cliches are rooted in truth. Clay sounded apologetic, but he believed it. The world was not as fearful as people thought. I don't know how to explain it, Ruth said, drying her hands on the towel and hung it back where it belonged. A building lit up, and it was alive. It was a beacon, Dark, it vanished, like David Copperfield had made the Statue of Liberty do that one time. Ruth associated the sudden absence of light with something being extinguished, with a switch being flipped, with a change, and this invented the question: what had been extinguished? What switch flipped? What had changed? "You've had a scare," Clay said. Ruth had learned only one thing from the current reality, and it was that everything held together by tacit agreement that it would. All it took to unravel something was one party deciding to do just that. There was no real structure to prevent chaos. There was only a collective faith in order. I was scared. I am. This last part she didn't quite whisper. She wasn't ashamed, but she wasn't embarrassed. What is it then? Was she fearful? Was she a fearful old woman now? We'll find out more tomorrow. Clay believed this. What if it's the North Koreans? The fat one, who fed his own uncle to the dogs? Ruth could not stop herself. What if it's a bomb, a missile? A year ago, was it? There was that false alarm in Hawaii where some terrible stretch vacationers and honeymooners and dropouts and housewives and surf instructors and museum curators thought that it was a missile that was on its way from Korean Peninsula to obliterate them. How would you spend the last 32 minutes? Looking for a basement, or texting your friends, or reading a story to your children in bed with your spouse? People would probably monitor their own destruction by CNN play-by-play, or the local stations wouldn't cut it away, and you would go out watching The Price is Right. The North Koreans? Amanda said it like it was something she had never heard of in the first place. What if it was Outer Mongolians, the Liechtensteiners, the Burkinabe? Did they even have a bomb in Africa? She'd watched Lauren Mazel conducting a Pyongyang. Some cable correspondent had promised détente. Some previous president had promised them all peace. Amanda didn't have time to think about the North Koreans and had no idea even what Ruth was talking about. Feeding people to dogs. She thought the rap on the Koreans was that they were the ones who ate dogs. It's not the North Koreans, GH said, shaking his head. But this was a remonstrative as he was willing to get. You didn't scold Ruth. She was a Bernard girl. She had ready answers. He fiddled with the heavy watch on his wrist. A nervous tick he knew was a tick. He had his money on Iran, maybe Putin. Not literally so. That was against the law. But he was no fool. How do you know? Now that they were safe, but there was a question mark there. Ruth could cede to the panic that had been there in her throat as they drove. She could say that she had been unable to in the car, afraid of jinxing them with an empty tank or punctured tire. She kept her silence and pictured the faces of her daughter and grandsons, the atheist prayer, Muslim fundamentalist, Chechen, true believers, rebels in Colombia, Spain, Ireland. Every country had its madmen. Wouldn't there have been a boom? This was a familiar feeling for Clay. Whenever he had to assemble furniture or the car made funny noises, how little he knew. Perhaps that was why, in his estimation, true intelligence was accepting how limited one's intelligence always is. This philosophy let him off the hook. You would have heard something, like if it had been a bomb. I was having breakfast at Balthazar on 9/11, GH said. remembering the silky omelet, the salty french fries. Can't be more than 20 blocks from the towers, right? I didn't hear a goddamn thing. Can we not talk about 9/11? Amanda said, uncomfortably. I heard the sirens and then people in the restaurant started talking, so... Ruth idly rapped her fingers against the countertop. There was no way to explain that the thing about dark is that it's rare. There's always some ambient light. There's always the contrast that helps you understand. This is dark. The pricks of stars, the leak beneath the door, the glow of an appliance, something. Wasn't its abilities to assert itself, and at breakneck speed at that, light's most remarkable quality? Without thinking, Clay gave his phone his fingerprint. The phone showed him a photograph of the children. Archie, the 11, Rose, only 8, rounded, small, innocent. It was startling to look at this evidence of the shelves now gone. Though he often didn't truly see this picture, obscured by little squares of information, the seductive glow of the phone itself. He felt phantom tingles when the phone was not on his side. Clay recalled that in January, in the spirit of resolution, he tried leaving his phone in another room while he slept. But that was how he did most of his newspaper reading, and staying informed was a worthy resolution. Still nothing, he said, answering a question they all wanted to ask, even if none of them had bothered to. They all decided to go to bed.
We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, opposed to secret oaths, opposed to secret proceedings, secret proceedings. No official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.